It was interesting because we decided to use the pandemic because people are on top of each other and it's just sort of exacerbating the things that are already challenges in your family. And so we use that as a lot of our examples right now. And then hopefully as we transition back into regular life, whatever that means at some point, then, all that stuff is still valid, but then we'll start to, use other things. But for now, there's so much good, bad stuff to talk about because of the pandemic.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to talk about good, bad stuff with the pandemic. Was because there's definitely good and bad stuff going on in my house relative to the pandemic. Example one, my highly social, completely socially motivated, somewhat learning disabled 14-year-old. This has been borderline disastrous for her. Her motivation for learning is 100% social.
Yeah.
She bases her achievement on how she's doing within the context of her peer group. And she has no peer group. So since March, she has become almost afraid of social situations. Like she's forgotten how to be social and has been really struggling with school in a different way. She has absolutely no motivation whatsoever to invest in school in any way, shape, or form. So I've been going back to your book about resilience, reading chapters here and there about, hey, this is what's going on. It doesn't seem to be doing anything. I don't know what it is about this moment in time for her has been really, really difficult.
Yeah. I mean, that social piece is probably the single most common thing that I hear in my private practice. It doesn't matter if someone is 10 years old or, 50 years old. Not everyone is like super motivated or just kind of energized and stimulated by people. Some people have other ways that they kind of fill themselves up. But for a lot of people, not having that is really throwing them for a loop. I mean, it makes me think of, how babies literally don't thrive. They call it failure to thrive if they aren't, touched. And if they aren't, we are social beings.
Yeah.
And it's like a plant with no water when we don't have that. I mean, I hear you. And it's like, I feel like in the beginning, people were good about trying to reach out and make sure they did FaceTime and doing Zoom calls and all that kind of stuff. But now people are sort of just over that.
Yeah.
And you have to still find ways to be social because some of us, can't handle it if we don't have that in our lives. I mean, so what are her options for being social right now?
Well, we have a couple families that are all in bubbles kind of together. So, we've been getting together with those other families a little bit, and that gives her a little bit. It's still, she's a freshman in high school. She was really looking forward to finding some new friends. So I'm not sure her circle is completely her jam. Our bubble is not really her jam.
Yeah.
Even though it gives her a social outlet, it's really not her jam. So I don't really know what to do. We've been thinking about with school, just having little Zoom party, just get to know people. But I don't know anybody at her new school, so it's just really challenging going to a new school. I know one other parent who we already have a relationship with, so it's not like, and she only knows me, so we don't have any resources outside each other. But the thing that's been concerning me with her is understanding when to push her out of her comfort zone and when to leave her alone in the context of what's happening right now. She really is scared of COVID. She's really, really scared. So like one of her favorite things to do, perfect example, first day of school, for 9 years on the first day of school, we've been walking to Menchie's to get yogurt. Tradition, right? Menchie's is 1 block away. And on the first day of school, I said, let's go to Menchie's and get yogurt. She was like, no, nope, not in a pandemic. And I was like, listen, we put masks on, we get the yogurt to go, we come home and we eat the yogurt at home, we wash our hands, we can't stop living life, and it's safe there. They're open, they're allowed to serve frozen yogurt. This is a safe option for COVID. And it took me like 20 minutes to talk her into going. And I kept saying, we can't stop life entirely. We have to just proceed safely. Use our noodle, proceed safely, and do our very best. And, but that's one of those times where I was like, do I push her into this or do I leave her alone?
I mean, that's interesting because then now you're talking about is like the whole conversation about what is safe and what is not. And I feel like our kids and people are getting conflicting information. So
Right.
As a family, as parents, we have to stay on top of that and figure out like what's going on in our kids' heads. Because sometimes they have stuff in their heads that we don't even necessarily agree with maybe,
Right.
And it's interesting because it's like it's changing all the time. Your kid can hear something that you didn't even realize they heard. And then, pushing about safety is interesting because you want your kids to trust you. But it's not just like a one conversation thing. It's like you did. It took 20 minutes and then sounds like you were able to convince her.
Yes, we went and she was okay. But it was one of those times where I go, I actually like her way of thinking. And I'd said that to her. I like how you're thinking. This is good. Because then I think, well, she's going to be very careful. Once this all opens up, she's really aware. Or if we open up a little bit, like if she goes back to school in a hybrid format, I know that she's going to be hyper aware of her safety, which is great, but it can't shut you down. Can't let it just shut you down. I think her inclination is to let it shut her down. And it's just the worst thing for her because she's so social. She's afraid to be with people, even in our bubble. I didn't realize that she had so much anxiety until this happened. And now I find her to have a lot of anxiety.
But specifically about the fear of COVID.
I think so. But, living with someone who has an anxiety disorder, I sniff the similarities of going, somebody might have their daddy's panic attack, anxiety stuff, even though she doesn't really have panic attacks, is very similar to her dad's.